Secret places, hidden locations, and long-forgotten facilities are strewn throughout the world. Sometimes knowledge of these locations are passed down from person to person, and sometimes they are just stumbled upon by pure chance. Some are ancient, and others are more modern. Most are of human construction, but some possibly not. People who know about secret places are always really odd kind of people, or they're considered dangerous. I know one such person, someone I was warned not to spend time with alone, because it was said that he might have killed several people who had mysteriously disappeared. I'm not going to disclose the location, but for the time that I lived there, this man came looking for me at my door, always at really inconvenient hours of the night or the early morning. I didn't really know what to make of it at first, but somehow I felt it was safer to invite him in for a coffee than to slam the door shut in his face. He came for these visits during a half-year period and would never really speak a lot. He had pitch-black eyes and would just ask me questions about myself and pierce a really deep gaze into my eyes when I answered. As suddenly as he appeared, he would stand up in the middle of a sentence and just say bye, then leave. After about a half year of these visits, one night he suddenly said, "Okay, I'm ready to show you now." I didn't have a clue what he was talking about, so I just stared at him. He went on to say, "I'm going to show you places nobody else has seen. Let's go." I remember all the warnings I had heard about him, but even so, I felt really compelled to go with him, and somehow, I didn't feel scared at all. On 4 occasions over the next year, he took me to some truly remarkable places. I made a holy promise never to reveal those places, and I'm going to stick to my promise. But I can say that I have seen things of other civilizations and writings in rocks that I have never seen in any ancient texts, no matter how many documentaries and videos I've watched about ancient writings. Still, the most intriguing part for me was the man who took me to all these places. I don't know why he chose me, nor why he had to choose someone, but every time we went out, he kept telling me, "You are the only person I have ever shown, and the only one I will ever show." My dad casually surprised me when he took me to a tomb deep within a cave complex when I was a small child. It was likely on private property, and not much was said. There were no signs, handshakes, or men with funny hats anywhere. No signs or safety rails were installed, and there was not a single sign of human life anywhere. We had hiked for an unknown amount of time, ducking in and out of similar-looking cave tunnels, going in circles, it seemed. I had lost all sense of direction, which may have been the point, but after walking a while through this labyrinth, we came upon a tomb-like cave. It was just like any other cave hike with my dad, except for the labyrinth, the tomb, and those old bones that I saw in front of us. But at this point, I had no clue about why we were there. As we left the last tunnel cave, where the trail suddenly ended, I noticed there was an unnatural stillness in the air, and also grass growing on the floor, but only in this deepest gallery of the cave. I said something like, "Are we close?" And my dad said, "Yeah," all reassuring and quiet-like. As we approached the gentle slope leading to this tunnel mouth, there was an odd stillness and lack of sound or wind. My dad was in no hurry now, even though we had hiked quite briskly the whole way there. My dad hung back at first and let me go ahead into the cave. I had seen many caves by that point, so I had no fear. As I get close to the mouth, I hear a sound. Not one tone, but several, in an odd harmony, quiet as the wind, though. A whooshing, humming sound, with a wavering sound like a detuned AM radio looking for a station. As I entered the cave, I felt the sound, like when you are near a huge speaker at the right frequency. For some reason, I was not bothered at all. There was a case in there. Oddly, the case was suspended on poles, so I could not see inside. My dad joined me at this point. Now I was buzzing with curiosity. How can I feel the sound when it is so quiet? I was thinking. My dad lifted me up, and I looked into this deep display case. The head looked like a beach ball was inside it, shape-wise. The thigh bone was long and out of proportion for how thin it was. The pressure of the sound now felt very intense, as was the sound. But after my eyes touched the bone, the sound suddenly went clear. The whooshing sounds had resolved into a clear whooshing hum of a whole spectrum of sound in the barely audible bass range. I could just feel this sound blow through me. He asks me what I thought of it. I say something dumb like, "Wow, cool," but I don't feel excited. My dad seemed surprised that I was so calm and in my element. Then we simply went home. The whole thing was so casual. I dated a girl in high school whose grandparents lived in a big house that was about 600 yards from the river that ran through our town. I was helping her grandfather carry Christmas decorations up from the basement one year, and I noticed a big bricked-off doorway. I asked him where that used to go. He said they had a tunnel that ran under the street in front of their house and all the way down to the river, where there were some railroad tracks. Apparently this tunnel had no lights, and it had dirt walls shored by timbers and a rough stone floor. The house had been in their family back to the 1800s. He wasn't exactly sure what the tunnel had been used for, but said he used to bring wooden pallets home from work to use as kindling wood for the fireplace, and he would store those pallets in the tunnel right behind the door. Like a lot of older people who had been through tough times in the past, they had a huge garden and would can vegetables and such to eat during the winter. One winter he noticed that their canned goods seemed to be dwindling much earlier than normal, but didn't think anything of it because grandmother was active in the church and sometimes would give food to the less fortunate. A few days later he noticed things disappearing from around the basement. Then a few days after that, disappearing from around the house. Kitchen utensils, pots and pans, candlestick holders, these sort of items. He asked grandmother if she knew anything about it, and she said no. One morning, his boss had asked him to come in early to meet a big shipment of something or other that was coming in. Being close to Christmas, they could use the extra money, so he agreed. He said he got up around 2 a.m. and went down to grab a few slats off the pallets to get a fire going to warm up the house. As he opened the basement door to go downstairs, he flipped on the light and saw what he thought was a man at the bottom of the basement stairs looking straight at him. It scared the crap out of him. He slammed the door and ran and got a gun from the bedroom and a flashlight. He went back down to the basement, looked around to make sure no one was there, opened the tunnel door and proceeded down the tunnel. The tunnel wasn't a straight shot down to the river and had a few bends in it where the diggers had avoided a large rock here and there. He got about halfway through and found a few of his pallets with some blankets, pots and pans, several jars of canned goods, and a stash of what passed for pornography at the time. He did not go to work that day. Instead, he went to the hardware store, waited for it to open, and proceeded to spend the day bricking up that doorway as fast as was humanly possible. He did say that he went into the tunnel from the river end several years later, and about 100 yards in, the tunnel had collapsed. In my childhood, I used to play hide and seek with a friend in the Black Forest in Germany. Because it's a very large, dense forest, and our parents told us of an evil witch that lives there who eats kids, we never went deeper into the woods than a mile. One day my cousin came to visit, and the three of us decided to go a little crazy and play hide and seek a little further into the forest. After a while, we found a hill where the woods seemed to open up a bit. We climbed up and accidentally came across some kind of old abandoned building. The doors were locked, but some windows were broken, so we got in to check it out. There was a bunch of rubble and trash lying on the floor, and the walls and ceilings were damaged. It all looked really dusty, and it smelled like mold. But one thing stood out in all that mess. There was one room that had a green bunker or safe door in the wall. It was shut. All of a sudden, we heard something behind the door. something like a clicking of metal. We thought someone was opening that door and almost crapped our pants. Frightened to the bone, we ran back through the forest all the way home. From that point on, we called it our scary place and where the witch lives that our parents told us about. After I got older, I went there again with the same friend I went there with in the first place. This time I thought I could take a couple of pictures, so I took my camera with me. When we got there, it seemed like in all these years, nothing had changed. The doors were still locked. The same windows were still broken. The only difference was, this time we saw trees starting to grow out through the pavement in front of the house. So we got in through the window, and something startled us the moment we looked in. The safe door was open. It wasn't my idea to go in, but somehow we ended up peeking inside. It was dark. We barely saw anything, but we walked past the door, down some stairs, into a hallway. The only light we had was from a cell phone display and the camera flash. There appeared to be a lot of rooms, approximately 8 by 10, filled with equipment that looked like it was from the 50s. Documents scattered across the floor which looked like military files with a US Air Force seal. One room had a huge boiler in it with a generator and a manual written in English on how to operate some kind of system, maybe heating or electric system. We obviously came to the conclusion this was really an old, maybe also secret due to the remote location, Air Force bunker or operations station dating back to the Cold War, or maybe even World War II. After we reached the end of the hallway, there was a door inside the ground. My friend lifted it up, and we looked at what was beneath. It turned out to be a pipe or a tunnel made out of metal. My guess was that it was a dried-out sewage system. My friend wanted to go in, but I was like, hell no. We'd seen enough, and I had the feeling we shouldn't really be here anyway. That was 8 years ago, and to this day we still talk about it. What it could have been and why it looked like someone abandoned it in the shortest time, leaving everything behind, and didn't bother to come back. And who opened the safe door? What was it that we heard behind the door when it was locked back in our childhood? Nevertheless, to this day it remains our scary place. This past year, while exploring off-trail at a recently opened state park, we found this really strange place in the woods that is probably about an acre or two of land that is always pitch black, even in the middle of the day. We ran through it, and it feels creepy as hell. When we checked it out from overhead on Google Maps, it just looks like any other pine forest. The thing is, most creepy things people claim to see in the woods, they could be lying about or have been mistaken. This creepy, light-absorbing patch of wood we've revisited many times now. I could take any one of you there and show it to you. And here it is. It's that patch of dense pines. As far as I can tell, for any logical explanation, that for some weird reason, the canopy grew so incredibly dense that it blocks all light from getting in. But for how or why trees would grow like that, I have no idea.